Jake Miller rubbed his tired eyes as he walked through the massive doors of the Galactic Market Station. The place was bigger than any mall back on Earth, with ceilings so high he couldn't see the top. Alien merchants of all shapes and sizes filled the wide corridors, their strange voices mixing into a confusing noise. Jake had been running his small restaurant on the Mars colony for 3 years now. Business was good, but customers always wanted something new. That's why he had traveled all the way to this famous trading station. He needed exotic spices, maybe some alien vegetables that humans could actually eat. The translation device in his ear buzzed and clicked as it tried to convert dozens of alien languages at once. Sometimes it worked perfectly, other times not so much. "Fresh Arcturian pepper, very hot, very good," shouted a creature that looked like a walking tree. Its branches waved packets of red powder in the air. "No thank you," Jake said politely, moving past the tree merchant. He had learned that Arcturian pepper could melt human teeth. Further down the corridor, Jake saw a crowd gathered around a large stall. The merchant there had 4 arms and purple skin that seemed to shift colors under the station's bright lights. This must be the famous spice dealer everyone talked about. Jake pushed through the crowd carefully. The 4-armed merchant noticed him immediately. "Ah, a human," the merchant said with a wide smile that showed far too many sharp teeth. "I have exactly what you need." "I'm looking for spices," Jake began, but the merchant was already pulling out various items from behind his counter. "Spices, yes. But wait, I have something special, very rare, perfect for humans." The merchant's lower arms typed something on a holographic screen while his upper arms reached for something. Jake's translator buzzed louder, struggling with the merchant's quick speech and the noise around them. Words came through in broken pieces. Service, companion, very skilled, cooking, household. The merchant held up a glowing data pad. "See here. Top quality, trained in 200 forms of domestic service, knows human customs. Very good. Price today only." Jake squinted at the alien writing on the screen. His translator attempted to read it. Domestic, assistant, standard contract, specialized services. The device sparked and made an unpleasant shrieking sound before continuing entertainment. Multiple functions. "My translator's acting up," Jake said, tapping the device in his ear. "This is for household help, right? Like a cook?" "Yes. Yes. Cooking, cleaning, anything you want." The merchant's grin grew even wider. "Very obedient. Top training. You'll be very satisfied." Jake thought about his restaurant. He could definitely use help in the kitchen. His human staff were good, but someone who knew alien cuisine would be perfect. The price displayed on the pad seemed reasonable for a trained chef contract. "Okay," Jake decided. "I'll take the contract." The merchant's eyes lit up, all 6 of them. "Excellent choice. Just press here, transfer credits here, and sign here." Jake followed the instructions, pressing his thumb to the scanner and watching his credit balance decrease. The contract was in multiple alien languages, and his translator only caught every 3rd word. He really needed to get this thing fixed. "Wonderful. Wait here, please." The merchant disappeared into a back room behind a heavy curtain. Jake stood there, feeling pleased with himself. This would really help the restaurant. He imagined the new dishes they could create, the exotic flavors that would bring in more customers. The merchant returned, but he wasn't carrying spice containers or cooking equipment. Instead, he led a person, a humanoid figure who walked with their head down, wearing simple gray clothes. Metal restraints glowed faintly around their wrists and ankles. Jake's stomach dropped. Something was very wrong. The figure looked up and Jake saw she was female, with light blue skin and silver eyes that held deep sadness. Her hair was white like snow, falling past her shoulders. She was beautiful in an otherworldly way. But that wasn't what made Jake's heart pound, it was the restraints. The way she kept her eyes down, the submissive posture. "What is this?" Jake's voice came out strangled. "Your purchase," the merchant said smoothly. "One Zephyrian pleasure slave. Top quality, as promised. She will serve all your needs." The word slave hit Jake like a punch to the gut. No, there's been a mistake. I thought the translator said domestic assistant. I wanted a chef. The merchant's expression hardened. No mistake. You signed the contract. You paid. She is yours now. He gestured to the data pad. All sales final. No returns. Jake felt sick. He looked at the woman, the slave, his mind corrected with horror, and saw her trembling slightly. She hadn't said a word, hadn't even looked at him directly since that first glance. I don't want a slave, Jake said firmly. This is wrong. There has to be a way to cancel this. The merchant crossed all four arms. The contract is legal and binding. She belongs to you now. Take her or lose your credits, but she cannot stay here. Other customers were starting to stare. Some alien species looked amused, others indifferent. Jake realized with growing horror that slavery was apparently normal here, accepted, even expected. He looked at the woman again. If he refused to take her, what would happen? Would she be sold to someone else, someone who actually wanted a slave? What's your name? Jake asked her gently. She glanced up briefly, surprise flickering in her silver eyes. This one is called Lyra, Master. The title made Jake flinch. Don't call me that. She immediately looked down again. As you wish. Jake made his decision. He couldn't leave her here. He would take her with him, then figure out how to free her properly. There had to be a way. Fine, he told the merchant through gritted teeth. I'll take her, but this isn't over. The merchant smiled triumphantly and handed Jake a small device. Her control unit, bound to your biometrics now. Enjoy your purchase, human. Jake took the device with disgust. He turned to Lyra, trying to keep his voice gentle. Come on, let's get out of here. She followed him silently as they left the market. Jake's mind raced with plans. He would free her. He would find a way to break those restraints. He would make this right. He just had to figure out how. As they walked toward the docking bay where his ship waited, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just taken a turn he never expected. He had come here for spices and was leaving with a person who thought she belonged to him. The translation device in his ear crackled one more time before finally dying completely. Jake pulled it out and stuffed it in his pocket. He would never trust one of those things again. Jake's ship, the Blue Moon, sat in Docking Bay 47 like a piece of home. The small cargo vessel wasn't fancy, but it was reliable and comfortable. Right now, it felt like a safe haven from the chaos of the market. Jake led Lyra up the boarding ramp, his mind still spinning from what had happened. The moment they were inside and the airlock sealed, he turned to face her. She stood perfectly still, hands clasped in front of her, eyes on the floor. Okay, Jake said, taking a deep breath. First things first. He held up the control device the merchant had given him. Without hesitation, he dropped it on the metal floor and stomped on it hard. The device shattered into pieces. Lyra gasped, her silver eyes going wide. Master, what have you done? The control unit. Stop calling me Master, Jake said gently. My name is Jake. Just Jake. He looked at the restraints on her wrists and ankles. They were still glowing faintly. How do these come off? She stared at him like he had grown a second head. They don't come off. They're neural locked. Only the control unit could. She stopped, looking at the broken pieces on the floor. Jake felt his stomach sink. There has to be another way. These things must have a release mechanism. The merchant has a master key, Lyra said quietly. But he would never. Wait here, Jake said. He was already moving toward his workshop. The Blue Moon had a small maintenance bay where he fixed things during long trips. He grabbed his toolkit and hurried back. Sit down, he told Lyra, gesturing to a chair. Let me look at these things. She sat carefully, extending her wrists. Jake knelt beside her, examining the restraints. They were smooth metal with no visible seams, but there had to be a way. Everything had a weakness. Tell me about these restraints, Jake said as he worked. What are they made of? How do they work? Lyra watched him with growing confusion. They're Vortanian steel. They respond to neural commands from the control unit. Without it, they're supposed to increase pain compliance if I disobey. Jake's hands stilled. Pain compliance? Yes, if I try to run or refuse orders or... She stopped, tilting her head. But I'm not feeling any pain, even though you destroyed the control unit. Jake frowned, thinking hard. Maybe destroying it broke the connection entirely. He pulled out a small scanner. Let me try something. He ran the scanner over the restraints, watching the readings carefully. There, a frequency pattern. The restraints were still active, but they were running on minimal power without the control unit to command them. I have an idea, Jake said. He programmed his scanner to emit the opposite frequency, creating interference. The restraints flickered, their glow fading. With a soft click, the restraint on her left wrist opened and fell to the floor. Lyra stared at her free wrist in shock. How did you... Basic electronics, Jake said with a small smile. Everything that uses power has a weakness. He quickly freed her other wrist, then moved to her ankles. Within minutes, all the restraints lay on the floor, completely powerless. Lyra rubbed her wrists, staring at Jake like she was seeing him for the first time. No one has ever... I don't understand. You own me. Why would you free me? Jake sat back on his heels, meeting her eyes directly. I don't own you. Nobody owns you. That contract was a mistake. I thought I was hiring someone to help in my restaurant. Not buying a person. But the credits you paid? I don't care about the credits, Jake said firmly. You're free. You can go wherever you want. I'll take you anywhere in the galaxy. Tears formed in Lyra's silver eyes. I have nowhere to go. Jake's heart ached at the pain in her voice. What about your home? Your family? Zephyria was destroyed in the war 5 years ago, she whispered. The survivors were scattered. Most were taken as slaves. I haven't seen my family since... Jake stood up slowly, giving her space. I'm sorry. I didn't know. He moved to the pilot's chair and pulled up the star charts. Look, there must be refugee colonies, places where your people went. No, Lyra interrupted softly. The free. Zephyrians won't accept me now. Not after what I've been. They would see me as tainted. Jake turned to face her, anger flashing in his eyes, not at her, but at the injustice of it all. That's their problem, not yours. You survived. That takes strength. She looked at him wonderingly. You're very strange for a human. Maybe, Jake agreed, but I know what's right and what's wrong, and keeping you as a slave would be wrong. He thought for a moment. Look, I have a proposal, not as owner and slave, but as one person to another. Lyra tilted her head, listening. I really do need help at my restaurant. I could hire you, actually hire you with pay and benefits and everything. You'd be an employee, not property. You could save money, figure out what you want to do with your life. And if you decide to leave, you leave. Your choice. Choice. Lyra repeated the word like it was foreign. I don't remember the last time someone gave me a choice. Well, get used to it, Jake said with a gentle smile. Because from now on, everything is your choice. What you eat, when you sleep, where you go, nobody will force you to do anything. Lyra stood up slowly, testing her freedom of movement without the restraints. And if I choose to stay, to work for you, then I'd be lucky to have you, Jake said sincerely. But only if it's what you really want. She was quiet for a long moment, processing everything that had happened. Then, slowly, she smiled. The first real smile Jake had seen from her. I think I would like to learn what it means to choose, she said. And I would like to learn from someone who sees me as a person, not a thing. Jake smiled back. Then welcome aboard the Blue Moon, Lyra, as a free person and if you're willing, as a friend. Friend, she repeated, and this time the word didn't sound foreign at all. It sounded like hope. Jake began plotting a course back to Mars, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something much bigger. He had come to buy spices and ended up finding a purpose he didn't know he was looking for. Outside the ship's windows, The stars shone like promises of all the possibilities that lay ahead. 2 weeks had passed since Jake brought Lyra aboard the Blue Moon. The journey back to Mars gave them time to adjust to their new situation, but it wasn't easy, especially for Lyra. "Is it okay if I eat now?" Lyra asked, standing in the ship's small galley. She held a meal packet but hadn't opened it. Jake looked up from his navigation console, trying to hide his sadness at the question. "Lyra, we've talked about this. You don't need permission to eat or sleep or use the bathroom or anything else." "I know," she said quickly. It's hard to remember." Jake stood and walked to the galley. "How about we eat together? I'm hungry too." They sat at the small table, sharing a simple meal. Jake noticed Lyra kept glancing at him, as if checking whether she was doing something wrong. "Tell me about Zephyrian food," Jake said, trying to start a conversation. "What did you eat on your homeworld?" Lyra's eyes brightened slightly. "We had fruit that grew in our crystal gardens. They were sweet and changed color when you touched them. And there was a grain that grew in the floating fields. We made bread that was so light it almost floated too." "That sounds amazing," Jake said. "Maybe we could try to recreate some of those recipes at the restaurant." "You would want Zephyrian food in your human restaurant?" Lyra asked, surprised. "Why not? Good food is good food, no matter where it comes from." For the next hour, Lyra talked about her childhood, her family's farm, the festivals they celebrated. It was the most Jake had heard her speak since they met. When she realized how much she had talked, she suddenly stopped. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to talk so much." "Don't apologize," Jake said. "I love hearing about your culture. Please never apologize for being yourself." The next morning, Jake found Lyra standing in front of the clothing storage, still wearing the same gray outfit from the market. "What's wrong?" he asked. I don't know what I'm allowed to wear." Jake opened the storage unit. "Anything you want? These are spare clothes for guests and crew. Pick whatever you like." Lyra reached for a simple gray shirt similar to what she wore. "Or," Jake suggested gently, "try something with color. What's your favorite color?" "Blue," she whispered. "Like the evening sky on Zephyria." Jake pulled out a blue shirt and comfortable pants. "Try these." When Lyra emerged from changing, she looked like a different person. The blue brought out the shine in her silver eyes. She touched the soft fabric with wonder. "It's beautiful," she said. "You look nice," Jake said, then added, "But more importantly, did you choose it because you like it or because you thought I wanted you to?" Lyra paused, thinking hard. I think I really like it." "Good. That's what matters." As days passed, Jake taught Lyra about the ship's systems. She was a quick learner, absorbing information about navigation, life support, and engine maintenance. But the hardest lessons were about freedom. One day, Jake was teaching her to pilot the ship. "Okay, take the controls, plot a course to Mars." Lyra's hands hovered over the controls. "What if I make a mistake?" "Then you'll learn from it. Everyone makes mistakes. But slaves aren't allowed to make mistakes. We get punished." She stopped, remembering. I used to get punished." Jake spoke gently. "You're not a slave anymore. And mistakes are how we learn. I crashed a simulator 12 times before I got my pilot's license." Encouraged, Lyra took the controls. Her movements were careful but precise. When she successfully plotted the course, her face lit up with pride. "I did it." "You did," Jake agreed, "and you did it well." That evening, they played a human card game Jake had taught her. For the first time, Lyra laughed, really laughed, when she won a round. "I've never played games before," she admitted. "Slaves don't get leisure time." "Well, you do now. We could watch movies too if you want, or read books. The ship's library has thousands." "I get to choose?" she asked, still uncertain. "Always." As Mars grew larger in the viewports, Jake noticed Lyra becoming quieter. One night, he found her, staring out at the red planet. "Worried about landing?" he asked. "What if the other humans don't accept me? What if they see me as just a slave?" Jake stood beside her. "Some people might have prejudices, but many more will see you as I do, as a person deserving of respect. And anyone who can't see that isn't worth your time. You really believe that? I know it. Humans have a complicated history with slavery. We did terrible things to each other. But we learned. We grew. We decided that freedom is a fundamental right for all thinking beings. Lyra was quiet for a moment. Your people chose to change. Yes. And you're choosing to change too. Every day, you're choosing freedom over fear. On their last night before landing, Jake cooked dinner. Real food, not packet meals. Lyra watched him work in the kitchen. Can you teach me to cook like that? She asked. Of course. Want to start now? They worked side by side, Jake showing her how to chop vegetables and season the food. When Lyra tasted the soup they made, her eyes widened. This is wonderful, we made this. You made this, Jake corrected, I just showed you how. As they ate their creation, Lyra spoke quietly. Jake, thank you. For what? For seeing me. Not as property or a slave or even an alien, just as me. Jake smiled. That's who you've always been, you're just starting to see it too. The next morning, as Mars filled their entire viewport, Lyra stood tall beside Jake at the controls. She wore the blue outfit she had chosen, her silver eyes bright with something that hadn't been there before. Hope. Ready? Jake asked. Yes, Lyra said, and for the first time there was no uncertainty in her voice. I'm ready to choose my new life. As they began their descent to Mars, Jake realized that he wasn't just bringing home a new employee. He was bringing home a friend who was discovering her own strength, one choice at a time. 6 months had passed since Lyra first set foot on Mars. The red planet's largest colony, New Olympus, had become her home in ways she never imagined possible. Jake's restaurant, the Cosmic Kitchen, buzzed with the dinner crowd. Lyra moved confidently between tables, no longer the frightened person who had arrived months ago. She wore a crisp white chef's jacket with her name embroidered in silver thread. Table 6 loved the Zephyrian cloud bread, she told Jake as she entered the kitchen. They want to know if we can ship some to Earth. Jake grinned, stirring a pot of sauce. That's the 5th request this week. Your recipes are making us famous. Lyra had transformed the restaurant's menu, introducing dishes that blended human and alien cuisines. Her natural talent for cooking, freed from the constraints of slavery, had flourished into genuine artistry. The dinner special is almost ready, she said, checking the oven. And the new server, Ben, is doing well. He's nervous, but he'll learn. Jake watched her coordinate the kitchen with quiet pride. The scared woman who once asked permission to eat now ran half the restaurant's operations. She had even hired and trained new staff, showing the same patience Jake had shown her. After closing time, they sat at their favorite table, sharing tea and reviewing the day's receipts. We made more this month than all of last year, Jake said, showing her the numbers. Lyra studied the data pad, then looked up with a serious expression. Jake, I've been thinking. About others like me, Zephyrians who are still slaves. She pulled out her own data pad, showing research she had compiled. There are thousands across the galaxy. Maybe more. Jake leaned forward, listening intently. I want to help them, Lyra continued. I've been saving my wages, researching the laws, finding out which systems still allow slavery. I want to start a foundation. Buy their freedom, like you did for me. That's a huge undertaking, Jake said carefully. I know, but someone has to do it. And who better than someone who's been there? Her silver eyes blazed with determination. I can't just live my comfortable life knowing others are still suffering. Jake was quiet for a moment, then smiled. You're right, and you won't do it alone. I'll help. You will? Of course, we're partners, remember? Over the next few weeks, Lyra threw herself into the project. She studied intergalactic law, contacted humanitarian organizations, and reached out to other free Zephyrians. Not everyone welcomed her at first. Some still saw her past as a stain, but her passion won over skeptics. One evening, Jake found her in the restaurant's office, surrounded by documents and star charts. I found a slave market in the Vega system, she said without looking up. 12 Zephyrians are being sold next month. If we can raise enough credits— Lyra, Jake interrupted gently. When's the last time you slept? She paused, thinking. Tuesday, maybe Monday. It's Thursday, come on, even freedom fighters need rest. As he guided her away from the desk, Lyra suddenly stopped. Jake? Do you think I'm crazy? Trying to change something so big? No, he said firmly. I think you're brave, and I think you're exactly what the galaxy needs. The next morning brought unexpected help. A group of human activists arrived at the restaurant, having heard about Lyra's mission. We want to support your foundation. Their leader, Maria Santos, announced. Humanity fought to end our own slavery. We should help others do the same. Soon, donations poured in from across Mars and beyond. The colonial government offered legal support. Even some alien species, moved by Lyra's story, contributed resources. 3 months later, Lyra stood before a crowd in New Olympus's main plaza. She wore a formal Zephyrian robe she had recreated from memory, its deep purple fabric shimmering with silver threads. Jake stood nearby, wearing his best suit. The Zephyrian Liberation Foundation officially launches today, Lyra announced, her voice carrying clearly across the plaza. Our mission is simple. No sentient being should be property. Every thinking creature deserves freedom. The crowd erupted, in applause. Reporters from dozens of worlds recorded her speech. 6 months ago, I was property. Lyra continued. I couldn't choose what to wear, when to eat, or where to go. Today, I stand here as proof that change is possible, but I didn't free myself. A human showed me what freedom meant. He saw me not as property, but as a person. She glanced at Jake, who smiled encouragingly. Humanity once struggled with slavery too. But they chose to change. They decided that freedom was worth fighting for. Now we ask the galaxy to make the same choice. After the ceremony, Lyra and Jake returned to the restaurant. The evening crowd was larger than usual, filled with supporters of the new foundation. You did it, Jake said as they prepared for the dinner rush. We did it, Lyra corrected. None of this would exist without you. I just removed your chains. You chose what to do with your freedom. Lyra smiled, tying on her chef's apron. And I choose to use it to remove others' chains. As they worked side by side in the kitchen, Jake marveled at the transformation. The frightened slave he had accidentally purchased was gone. In her place stood a leader, a chef, an activist, and most importantly, a free person who had found her purpose. That night, as they closed the restaurant, Lyra showed Jake the latest report. We've raised enough to buy freedom for those 12 Zephyrians in the Vega system. The first rescue mission launches next week. Want me to come with you? Jake offered. No, you're needed here, but knowing you're supporting me from Mars, that's enough. They stood at the window looking out at the Martian night sky. Earth shone bright in the distance, and beyond it, countless stars held countless worlds where beings still lived in chains. It's a big galaxy, Jake said quietly. Yes, Lyra agreed, but every journey starts with one step, and look how far we've already come. As they watched the stars, both knew this was just the beginning. The transformation that had started in one person was spreading across space, carried by the simple but powerful idea that freedom belonged to everyone. 1 year later, Jake stood in the Grand Colonial Council chamber, his heart swelling with pride. The massive hall was packed with delegates from across human space and beyond. At the center podium stood Lyra, addressing the assembly with the confidence of someone who had found their true calling. The Zephyrian Liberation Foundation has successfully freed 3,042 slaves in the past year, Lyra announced. Her voice was strong and clear, reaching every corner of the chamber. Working with our partners across 30 systems, we project complete abolition of Zephyrian slavery within 2 years. The hall erupted in thunderous applause. Jake watched as human delegates stood first, followed by representatives from other species. Even some who had initially opposed the foundation now rose to show their support. Lyra continued her report, presenting data, thanking donors, and outlining future plans. She wore formal ambassador robes now, deep blue with silver trim, colors she had chosen herself. The scared woman who once couldn't pick her own clothes now commanded the attention of interstellar leaders. This success belongs to many, Lyra said, her silver eyes scanning the crowd. To the Colonial Council for Legal Support, to our donors who believed change was possible, to the volunteers who risked their safety in rescue operations, and to humanity, who showed the galaxy that slavery's chains can be broken forever. After the session ended, Jake made his way through the crowd. Reporters surrounded Lyra asking questions about upcoming missions and new legislation. She handled each query with grace, her answers thoughtful and precise. Finally, she spotted Jake and excused herself from the press. They walked together to a quiet balcony overlooking the Martian landscape. 3,000 lives freed, Jake said, shaking his head in amazement. When you first told me your plan, I hoped for maybe a dozen, Lyra smiled. I learned from a good teacher. You showed me that impossible things become possible when someone decides to act. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the red hills. The cosmic kitchen was visible in the distance, now expanded to 3 locations across Mars. I have news, Lyra said after a moment. The Galactic Senate wants to appoint me as Special Ambassador for Sentient Rights. It's a permanent position with real power to change laws across the galaxy. That's incredible. You'll accept, of course? Yes. But it means leaving Mars, traveling constantly. I'll miss our restaurant, our life here. Jake turned to her. The restaurant will be fine. This is what you were meant to do. What about us? Lyra asked quietly. We've been partners in everything. I don't want to lose that. Jake took her hands in his. Partners adapt. We'll find a way. Besides, someone needs to run the Foundation's operations on Mars, and maybe open restaurants on other worlds to fund rescue missions. Lyra laughed, the sound full of joy. Always thinking ahead. I learned from a good teacher too, Jake said. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, they talked about the future. The Foundation was expanding beyond Zephyrians, helping enslaved beings of all species. New laws were passing in system after system. The tide was turning. You know what the best part is? Lyra said, leaning against the balcony railing. The slavers are afraid now. They know their time is ending. Every day more beings choose freedom over fear. Because you showed them it was possible, Jake said. Because we showed them, she corrected. None of this started until a human restaurant owner decided to see a person instead of property. They walked back inside together, passing through halls filled with beings of different species working toward a common goal. At the building's entrance, Jake's old ship, the Blue Moon, sat in a place of honor, a monument to the journey that had started it all. Funny how life works, Jake mused. I went shopping for spices and accidentally started a revolution. Lyra laughed again, linking her arm through his. The best accidents change the universe. As they headed back to the restaurant for one last dinner shift together before Lyra's new adventure began, Jake reflected on the truth of her words. Sometimes the most important journeys were the ones you never planned to take, and sometimes, accidentally buying a love slave could lead to freeing a galaxy.